Oceania sells a dream that begins with distance. Long flights over open water. Small islands that appear only at the end of a map. Cities that feel orderly enough to promise safety and remote enough to promise escape. That is why this story matters. We are not only watching where tourists went, we are watching how a scattered region turned remoteness into an industry, and how prosperity changed the meaning of that success. New Zealand stands at the center because it sits inside the paradox more clearly than anyone else. It is rich enough to feel stable, scenic enough to feel cinematic, small enough to depend on reputation, and large enough to matter globally. It does not dominate Oceania the way Australia does in raw scale. It does something subtler. It turns isolation into a premium experience and then spends the decade proving that the world is willing to travel a very long way for that promise. On one side of the chart, we follow international tourist arrivals. That is the blunt measure of foot traffic. Planes landing, bags rolling across terminals, hotel rooms filling, rental cars leaving airport lots, cruise passengers stepping into humid air. On the other side, we watch GDP per capita. That number asks a colder question. How wealthy is each society behind the postcard? Together, the pair tells us whether a visitor economy rests on broad national comfort or on a narrower dependence, where tourism feels less like a bonus and more like oxygen. Australia begins as the giant. It has the biggest airports, the largest cities, the deepest airline networks, and the broadest long-haul pull. In pure arrivals, it towers over the rest of Oceania. But Australia is not the whole story. New Zealand rises as the region's master of curated allure. Fiji lives closer to the classic island holiday fantasy and shows how a smaller country can punch above its weight in travel demand. Vanuatu and New Caledonia occupy a smaller lane, but still reveal the high stakes of being visible on a crowded Pacific horizon. Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands remind us that geography alone does not guarantee tourism strength. Infrastructure, trust, and air connectivity matter just as much as beauty. For New Zealand, the decade opens under stress. A severe Canterbury earthquake tears through the South Island, and suddenly, the image of calm distance is interrupted by disaster. This is one of the hidden truths of tourism. Destinations do not simply market themselves. They must repeatedly reassure the outside world that arrival still feels safe and worth the effort. The rebuild becomes part of the national story. Then comes the Rugby World Cup in 2011, and the country receives a global stage on home soil. Sport matters here not because it changes the landscape, but because it changes attention. It tells millions of viewers that this small place at the bottom of the world can host something large without losing its character. The film era deepens that effect. The Hobbit premiere in Wellington is not only an entertainment milestone, it reinforces one of New Zealand's most powerful tourism assets: the idea that its scenery belongs to myth as much as to geography. This matters more than it sounds. In modern travel, people often buy narrative before they buy tickets. New Zealand sells the feeling of stepping into a world that was already beautiful before the camera arrived, and became even more desirable after it did. That makes every flight feel longer in the imagination and more justified once booked. But the right side of the chart keeps us honest. New Zealand is not chasing visitors from a low-income base. Its GDP per capita stays among the highest in the region, even while arrivals keep climbing. That separates it from the more vulnerable island economies. Fiji is a wonderful example. It is a tourism magnet with a far smaller domestic base and a much tighter connection between visitor flows and everyday economic breathing room. Vanuatu shows a similar fragility at a smaller scale. For those economies, a bad travel year can feel immediate and personal. For New Zealand, the shock is serious too, but filtered through a broader and richer economic structure. Australia creates another contrast. It attracts enormous numbers simply because it has the scale to do so. Multiple global gateways, business travel, education travel, visiting friends and relatives, big city tourism, reef tourism, events, migration spillover. Its prosperity is already established, and the visitor economy sits inside something much larger. New Zealand cannot copy that model. It wins by precision. It offers a more distilled version of the Pacific promise. Mountains and harbors close together. Adventure and safety packaged within a manageable national frame. In travel, that can be a powerful advantage. People do not only buy the biggest destination, they buy the clearest one. As the middle of the decade unfolds, the chart shows how strong the region became before the pandemic arrived. Australia keeps advancing. New Zealand keeps adding visitors. Fiji crosses into a higher class of relevance for island tourism. Vanuatu moves up and down with a smaller but still meaningful flow. Papua New Guinea remains far lower because tourism there cannot outrun deeper questions of connectivity and confidence. The Solomon Islands stay even smaller and underline the same lesson. Remote beauty is never enough on its own. The visitor economy runs on practical trust. Flight schedules, roads, ports, medical access, hotels, payment systems, and the belief that a holiday will feel easy rather than uncertain. This is where GDP per capita becomes more than a wealth ranking. It acts like a silent measure of resilience. High-income societies can usually absorb volatility better. Lower-income island states can look stable until a cyclone, an earthquake, a volcanic event, or a border shock cuts through the aviation chain. When that happens, the difference between a diversified economy and a tourism-exposed economy becomes brutally visible. New Zealand's relative prosperity never removes risk. It changes the way risk lands. Fiji and Vanuatu often face the same weather and aviation vulnerabilities with far less cushioning behind them. The final years before the pandemic bring even more reminders that the Pacific is not a frictionless paradise. Natural shocks do not stay politely outside the brochure. New Zealand suffers the Kaikoura earthquake, and later the Whakaari White Island eruption. Vanuatu and Fiji know the recurring pressure of cyclones and damaged infrastructure. The region's travel economy keeps growing anyway, because demand remains strong enough to forgive interruption, as long as recovery looks credible. That credibility becomes one of the most valuable assets any destination can own. By 2018 and 2019, Oceania seems almost built for the age of curated travel desire. Social media favors dramatic coastlines and clear water. Long-haul travel becomes more normalized for affluent travelers. New Zealand looks polished and distinctive. Australia looks broad and reliable. Fiji looks idyllic. Even smaller islands benefit from the wider halo. Underneath that optimism, however, the charts are also showing concentration. Too much of the region's visitor economy depends on the uninterrupted movement of aircraft and the confidence of foreign households. It feels strong because it is moving fast. It is also fragile because it depends on a chain that can break all at once. Then 2020 arrives, and the entire structure collapses almost in a single motion. Borders harden, flights disappear, arrivals fall off a cliff across Oceania. The shock is especially revealing because it strips away the illusion that tourism scale is the same as economic security. Australia drops from giant numbers to a much thinner flow. New Zealand closes its borders and turns inward despite its carefully cultivated global appeal. Fiji and Vanuatu feel the pain in a more existential way because travel is woven more tightly into everyday livelihoods. The Pacific does not merely lose visitors, it loses circulation. That is why New Zealand works so well as the hero of this episode. It is not the region's biggest destination and not its most tourism-dependent economy. It sits in the crucial middle, where the paradox becomes visible. New Zealand shows how a wealthy remote society can build a globally desired visitor economy without letting that economy define the whole nation. It also shows how even the best managed destination cannot escape a systemic interruption in global movement. The planes stop for rich places too. By the end of the period, the lesson is clear. Tourist arrivals measure excitement, but GDP per capita measures the thickness of the floor underneath that excitement. Oceania contains both models. Australia has giant scale and deep ballast. New Zealand has prestige scale and high-income resilience. Fiji and Vanuatu have beauty and dependence in the same frame. New Caledonia shows how a smaller, high-income territory can remain wealthy without matching the largest visitor volumes. Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands reveal how difficult it is to turn geography into traffic when the surrounding systems are weaker. The bars never say all of this directly. They only show motion. Yet the motion tells a human story. A region scattered across the ocean learned how to sell a rival itself. It learned that beauty becomes industry only when airlines' infrastructure trust and global attention all line up. New Zealand became the hero because it captured that formula with unusual balance. For one long decade, it proved that remoteness could be an asset, rich societies could still chase visitors, and a small country could stand near the center of the world's travel imagination. Then, the decade ended by reminding Oceania that the visitor economy is always powerful and never permanent.